Okay, we're going to read another extract from Letters from the Lighthouse by Emma Carroll. Okay, and this one, the chapter is titled Loose Lips Sink Ships. And we actually talked about that last week. Can you remember when we talked about propaganda and the posters? But we'll come to that in a minute, okay? So this is the first time we're reading, so you just read along in your head, and then when we do it later in the week, we'll all read along together. If you've got a pencil in front of you, you can underline any words that you perhaps don't know the meaning of as we go, because we can then have a chat about those at the end, okay? Because there might be some words, okay? Or phrases or sayings you don't understand. Are you ready? Okay. As I ran down the main street, other people were coming out of their houses. Women still tying on pinnies, old men in undervests, children rubbing the sleep from their eyes. I was glad to find Cliff almost immediately standing with Queenie on the steps of the post office. I tried to hurry him back inside, thinking the cellar would be a good place to shelter. "Oh, give over, Olive," Cliff cried. "No one else is going in." Incredibly, there was no air raid warden, nor any sign of one on their way. We might as well have been watching a horse race or a carnival procession for how relaxed everyone seemed. Determined not to leave Cliff on his own, I muttered crossly how foolish it was not to go inside. Everyone was gazing out to sea. It was a bright winter's day, the sun so low and glary you had to shield your eyes, yet the dark shapes of the Luftwaffe were clearly visible in the sky. "If Jerry bombs my cabbages," said a man with shaving foam still on his cheeks, "he'll have me to answer to." "Oh, Jim," Mrs. Moore, who ran the bakery, called across the street. They're heading for Plymouth, you daft apeth, not your garden." What bothered me was the planes were getting closer and louder. There were 6 of them, one out in front, 2 flying higher, 2 directly below, one bringing up the rear. They flew parallel to the coast, close enough to see the distinctive black crosses on the plane's sides, close enough to be almost level with the long, low platform of rocks on which stood the lighthouse. "Let's go, Cliff," I said again. "In a minute," he shrugged off my arm. "This is the cat's bananas." "They're German fighter planes, real ones," I said through gritted teeth. "It's not some film at the Picture Palace." I didn't like that he'd used Suki's phrase either, and got it wrong. Someone shouted, "Look, they're turning inland by the lighthouse." A few hundred feet above the lighthouse, the German formation was changing shape. "That bleeding lighthouse," said old Mr. Watkins, whose tobacco ration I delivered every day. "Them Jerry pilots are using it to find their way. Look at them, clear as day they are." "Not surprised," Mrs. Moore replied. "It stands out like a beacon." I watched in despair as the first plane turned almost at right angles. The others followed close on its tail. It was obvious that they were, like the man said, using the lighthouse to guide them in. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Queenie bend down and pick something up off the ground. Within moments, the sky above us darkened. Everyone cowered down. I grabbed Cliff and we clung to each other. It was terror on my part, though Cliff was grinning madly. At little more than roof height, the planes went over. You could see the numbers on their undersides, the sections of metal held together with rivets. The stench of burning engine fuel made my throat catch. And the noise, it was so horribly high-pitched, I thought my ears would burst. "Jeez!" Cliff yelled. I couldn't bear to look anymore. It was then I noticed Queenie. She was the only person in the street not cowering. Her arms raised, she was hurling stones at the planes. I don't know if she hit them. It was her face that shocked me more. Glasses askew, teeth bared, she looked almost savage. Once the last plane had gone over, a stunned silence fell. It made the ringing in my ears even worse. Then all at once, everyone was talking in that jokey, shrill way people do when they've been scared and are relieved it's over. Finally, Cliff let me drag him back to the post office where, once inside, we started babbling with nervous excitement. "If they'd turned their guns on us, we'd all be dead," I snapped my fingers, just like that. It was amazing, Olive. Terrifying, more like. The plane was so close, wasn't it? Did you see what the pilots did? Their pilots did. It was like the lighthouse was a signpost or something, telling them where to turn. "Did you see what Queenie did?" I stopped, reddening. Queenie had come in so close behind us, I thought she had overheard. Luckily, though, she was deep in conversation with Mrs. Henderson. Okay, any words or phrases that you saw? I think especially at the very beginning of that there was a few, wasn't there, that you might not have heard of before?
Pennies.
Pennies.
Yeah.
Who knows what a penny is? Put your penny on. Apron.
Oh.
Like, you know, like your painting apron. It used to be the bottom half. You know when you get half an apron? It was like the bottom half. It was like, you know, you see them just like that?
Yeah.
That's a pinny. Any more? Any more? Luftwaffe. That is the German aeroplanes. You know how we call Spitfires and different things? That was the name of the German aeroplanes. I'm never 100% convinced I say it properly, but I think it's the Luftwaffe. I think W's are these. Pardon? Plymouth, that's a place. It looks like Plymouth, you're right, it's spelled Plymouth, but it's Plymouth. One of those ones. Tobacco. What's in cigarettes? That's tobacco. But in there, they didn't have pre-rolled cigarettes, they had to roll themselves to get pouches of tobacco.
I'm not sure.
What page?
75.
Next to of rocks.
Oh no, before not your garden.
Where am I looking? Ah,
In the speech.
you Darth Apeth.
Yeah.
Yeah? Darth Apeth. We used to get called that when we were little, Darth Apeth. It's actually Apeth, it's actually halfpenny. Or a halfpenny. It's all kind of abbreviated, and a halfpenny was money at the time. I'm not quite sure how much it's worth. But yeah, it comes from, it's just a way of saying, oh, you know, you donut, you banana. It's a colour to you Darth Apeth. Darth, I've actually written here, halfpenny worth. So, you know, you're a Darth, like, yeah. Yeah. We would use, you know, sometimes donut and things like that, don't you? Silly donut. Yeah? Any more? What's a jerry? Jerry was referred to a couple of times in there. Any idea who it's referring to? Yes, yeah. We'll look into that, because actually there's, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but there is a specific meaning where Jerry came from. It's with a capital J as well, isn't it? So they're using Jerry to refer to German bombers. Give over. You heard the phrase give over? Yeah, you heard that before. Air raid warden. Know what an air raid warden is. Pinnies. When Cliff says the cat's bananas, the phrase was actually the cat's pyjamas, which means something's really good. Oh, it's like the cat's pyjamas. Like, it's fantastic. We have similar phrases, but they're ones that are like relevant for our time. Okay, so what your next job is going to be is filling in the what I think it means sheets. There's two versions. One that's got more help on it and one that's got more for you to fill in. And the yellow is to understand words or phrases and phrases in context. So the word or phrase is down the left-hand side. What I think it means in context. What does context mean?
So like where it is in the text.
Yeah, within the text. So context within the text. So sometimes when you take things out of context, they may mean different things. So you know when we look in dictionaries and sometimes there's more than one meaning for a word, we have to think about what it means in the context we're looking at. We use that quite a lot, don't we? So it's what those words and phrases in relation to Letters from a Lighthouse, okay? If you've got the one with a bit more help on it, it is showing you an example at the top. It's giving you some sentence starters as well. Did you know undervests? Yeah, just a vest, yeah. But I think most people in those times wore undervests, so a vest, so most men would have had a vest on. Whereas today you kind of think it's more of a children's thing, don't you? But often men wore vests underneath things. That's what we all need now, because it's freezing cold. To keep them warm and to keep them covered up. So what time of day do you think this was all going on?
Evening-ish.
Yeah, either the end or the beginning of the day, didn't it? The way some people were still shaving and some people had their undervests on. It kind of feels like it wasn't middle of the day, it was either end.
I think it was at the beginning, because I think it said something about rubbing asleep.
Yes, but they could have been woken up if it was early. Maybe they'd gone to bed. I thought that. I remember seeing that the children were rubbing the sleep out of the eyes. So that makes you think early morning. But then the sun was low in the sky, so that could be the end of the day. Children could have already been in bed. But then shaving you tend to do in the morning. Men tend to shave in the morning, so I think it's probably morning. Okay, so you've all got your sheets. You all know what you're doing. Off you go.